Aloha, welcome to another episode of Ancient Oblivion. I'm JayDreamerZ. Nice to have you all here. Today we're going to be talking about Gog and Magog, specifically prophecies about this tribe of people, or these tribes of people that are said to be basically the end times army, the last army, an uprising of strange and strong humanoid beings that don't seem to be of our world. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, what's the connection to werewolves? I'm also going to point out some different theories that I have regarding these strange people and where they come from and what they look like. All of this is also mentioned and dedicated within a chapter in my new book, Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea. And in that book, you can read about the Anode and the Cathode Islands up in the north that flank either side of Hyperborea and their connection to the Amazonian women and werewolves and the tribe of dog-headed men and other things too. It's a really fun and interesting chapter in that book. So without any further ado, let me just jump into the chat, make sure everybody can hear me. Larissa is on it and says it sounds good already. Thank you so much. That was very kind of you. She already knew I was going to ask for a sound check. All right, cool. Sweet. Right on. Well, what do you guys know about Gog and Magog? Basically, that's it, right? What's up, babe? Welcome to my channel. Let's check it out. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Let's take a look at Gog and Magog. All right, now, this is from ChatGPT over here. Let's see. Let me go ahead and get this pulled up. Okay, so the legend of this tribe, let me just sum it up at the beginning. I'm just going to give it to you in a nutshell. Basically, right before the end of the world, there's Armageddon. There's a huge worldwide war that involves everybody from every nation, every country. Everybody is at war with each other, and they're gathered together. The main portion of this war takes place in one place. The Bible would refer to this as the hill or the mountain of Megiddo, or the valley of Megiddo, or a mountain that is basically surrounded by a valley. And this is also Ragnarok in Norse mythology. This is the gathering together of every type of life form where there is truly a world war. I'm not talking about a political, theoretical World War III between Russia, North Korea, the United States, or any of the usual suspects. I'm talking about something that seems more like it's out of a sci-fi or fantasy novel than it is anything that we would be used to today. This is something I believe is going to completely take everybody by surprise and scare the crap out of most people. It's going to probably take the form of some kind of alien invasion, I would imagine how it would be put forth. However, I believe that all of these quote-unquote aliens come from within the earth. All right, so we're going to take a look at these. Gog and Magog, as a nation of people. Sometimes it's referred to as one person who's called Gog from Gog. Sometimes it's described as two. And we have examples of this all throughout the major religions. We also have a Jewish tradition in the Talmud and Midrash. They talk about Gog and Magog linked to the war of the end of days, a final battle before the Messianic age. So before we go into the actual completion of the polarity reversal, there is this appearance of these strange alien humanoids that are monstrous and gigantic, according to some sources. Some sources describe them as giants or supernatural beings rather than just nations. A Midrash text connects them to Alexander the Great, who supposedly trapped them behind a great iron gate in the Caucasus. So there's a legend of Alexander the Great, who was said to come up against the nations of Gog and Magog, and that he sealed them off from the rest of the world behind this gate of iron. It also makes itself known in Islam, in the Quran and the Hadiths, known as Yajuj and Majuj. They are described as wild, destructive beings who will swarm across the earth near the end of times. They were sealed behind a barrier by Dul Qarnayn, often identified with Alexander the Great. When they finally break free, they will consume all water sources, devour everything, and overrun the world before divine destruction wipes them out. Some interpretations see them as literal tribes, while others suggest that they're symbolic, barbaric, or chaotic forces. I think the word barbaric there is appropriate too. I have a barbaric or a barbarian connection too. Christian and medieval legends. I wonder if I can make this bigger for you guys. There we go. Christian and medieval legends. Medieval Christian texts associated Gog and Magog with the Mongols, or Manghouls, seeing them as a scourge prophesied in the Bible. There's also a lot of Scythian connections and whatnot, Tartarian connections. The Gog-Magog giants in British mythology were said to be the last of a race of giants defeated by Brutus of Troy. And Woundsocket just gifted a free channel membership to somebody in the chat. Right on. Rock of Shepherd. Hey, congrats. All right, so there's also this connection to these ancient cities like Troy. Now, Troy, I have a theory that I put forth quite often that many of our ancient country names were actually renamed from survivors that migrated there from the North Pole or from Hyperborea, right? So Troy would be one of those. The ancient city of Troy. The root of Troy is tar, T-R, and it means tree, essentially. And then O-I at the end was like a Greek way of saying those of thee. So those of the tree, or the great tree, or the tree of life. They appeared in apocalyptic texts, Gog-Magog, like the Sibylline oracles, often as a force of destruction that comes forth from the north. You see that? So we're starting to put some of the pieces together as to who they are and where they come from. They're actually located on Earth or in Earth somewhere. So we're going to put more of these pieces together. Strange and unique details. Some Jewish legends say Gog and Magog's armies will use supernatural or ancient weapons, not modern ones. So this sounds like advanced technology to me that comes up from within the earth. And I'm going to give you some examples of technology that is said to be within the earth too by gigantic humanoids that live down there. Also, we got early Christian writers linked Magog to the Scythians, known for their mysterious origins and nomadic conquests. I think that's appropriate. There are theories that Gog and Magog are hidden in an inaccessible place, possibly underground, or beyond a physical barrier, waiting to be unleashed. I do believe that they are underground and contained underground due to the way that the electromagnetics run through the ground. It's basically they're cut off by a force field and possibly even physically cut off as those cave entrances were covered up and whatnot. We're going to talk about some theories here in just a bit. Some medieval maps place them in Siberia or beyond the Arctic. This is why there's like a Russian connection. There used to be a country called Rosh. They just added the god name Yah at the end of it. Rosh Yah. Rosh means top or head, which is where these people come from. The top of the earth, the head of the earth, which is why Russia is named that. Or beyond the Arctic, that would be Hyperborea, or the lands thereof, right? Hyperborea encompasses the outer islands as well as those 4 quadrants in the middle on the Mercator map. This reinforces the data that they are a distant, mysterious people. The Gog and Magog effigies in London's Lord Mayor's Show parade originate from ancient myths about Britain's founding giants. And I also think that there's probably a connection to Romulus and Remus and them being suckled by this she-wolf and whatnot. You'll see why here in just a bit. Now, let's continue on. Let me share with you something. I'm going to share with you this map. All right, I love this map. There's different versions of this map, but this land, the circular land that you see here, this is the North Pole. This map right here was made by a man named Gerard Mercator in the Dark Ages, in the Middle Ages, and all throughout the Middle Ages, from various parts of the world, all across the world, cartographers constantly drew in this landmass and always gave it the same structure, the same look, the same number of rivers, the same ways that the rivers are split, and the same descriptions time and time again. This is land. This is a country at the North Pole. This is essentially Atlantis. This is also the Hesperides, or the extreme western part of the world. This is the 4 corners of the Earth. And as you can see, there are many other small island masses over here off to the side. I'll give you an example about renaming countries, right? There's an island over here off to the side of Hyperborea called Grok land, which I believe is a good candidate for the original Greece, or Greeceland, basically, right? This is where the Greeks lived. I also believe that this is the original Nile down here at the bottom. This is the original Euphrates up here at the top. And there's been talk of an especially powerful interest by the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, to buy this land, which, as you can see, this is Greenland, or Groenland, and it very nearly touches paradise, if this is indeed paradise. It very nearly goes right up to it and knocks on the door of paradise, and it's right next to this peninsula, the only peninsula on this circular land, too. A little horn that sticks out right here. And as you can see, there's a mountain range that splits into a Y shape, giving beach and land off the sides of this Hyperborean island. But this right here is Greenland. And right up here in the northern tip of Greenland, this is a military base, a United States military base called Thule, which is one name for it. But this is where they have Project Iceworm, where mysteriously, and for some reason, they're digging these underground tunnels, miles and miles of underground tunnels, under the pretense that they were going to try to sneak and store nuclear weapons. But, you know, it didn't work out, and they're no longer going to do that, they promise. And so they declassified all of this information about trying to hide nukes from their enemies. That sounds like something you wouldn't declassify, don't you think? Like, even though it didn't work out, you still wouldn't really want to tell your enemies, like, yeah, we were going to hide our best weapons near your country, but we decided not to. Anyway, I believe that they're trying to tunnel into Hyperborea, or get back into the Garden of Eden, but also communicate with those other giant humanoids that are trapped under our world, or in the underworld, or in the place between worlds, really, because it's just underneath us, but it's not quite the middle of the world, or the hollow portions of the hollow earth, or whatnot. Anyways, now let's get back to this map. I want to show you something. So there's 4 quadrants here. Each one of these quadrants had its own regions. It had its own city-states and all those types of things. This is a vast amount of land, okay? And even the places between these rivers here are said to have been inhabited by different types of people. One side, it seems, will make you grow taller. The other side, it seems, will make you grow smaller. On this side, we have the land of the Pygmies, also called Skraeling, or Skraelingers, or the Dwarven people. And there's also rumors that the people of Hyperborea, or Atlantis, or Eden, or whatnot, many people speculate that they went to war with dwarves, or orcs, or some type of underground humanoid race that looks different than the native inhabitants do. Right? There's keen interest in the Arctic right now by all of the major players in the modern world. On the other side, though, now some people believe that there's actually a gate, an opening, and there always are anomalies and exceptions. Okay, some people believe that the gate and the opening to get into Eden is over here at the tip, which makes sense. I mean, if this map, you know, it has any truth to it, then you would think you could just go from here to here and then, you know, sail on in to the Garden of Eden. But that's not quite how it works. There's a huge mountain range. These are called the Rephaim mountain range, right? Of the mountain range of the Titans, the mountain range of the Giants, the mountain range of the Healers, etc., and so on and so forth. They're called this because they exhibit electromagnetic power. They exude, I should say, electromagnetic power, okay? This is the physical portion. These mountains are the physical portion to basically a magical barrier, or an electromagnetic force field that wraps around Eden, which is a plasma sheath that covers the island, or does whenever the island is above water, and possibly even whenever it's below water, actually. Anyways, many people speculate that there's an opening over here on this side because the legends indicated that it was on the side where Greenland sat. This is Greenland, and it is called Groenland. However, on the exact opposite side of the map, over here, Mercator and others put another island. They said that this is a magnetic pole. It's a giant mountain split at the top with an opening at the top, just like a volcano would be. And it juts right up out of the ocean, right? Now, let's say, I'll get back to this in a second. Let's just assume that the top of the world acts as the battery of the Earth, or the energetic center of the Earth, just like a battery, that it supplies the power. It puts out the signal for the rest of the world, right? Let's just assume that for a moment. Then I would expect that we would have an anode and a cathode, a positive side and a negative side. Each one would have its own effects on the residents that live about those places, right? On one side of the anode and cathode, in a system that's called an electrolytic system. Basically, when you run energy through a medium such as water, and then you put an electrolyte in the water, like salt or brine or ocean water, right? You can pass electricity through the water from the anode to the cathode, or vice versa, depending on what type of a cellular structure it is, okay? All I'm saying is that electricity passes from up here to down here through a current around this island, which is an electromagnetic island anyways, or a magnetic island, has a gigantic magnetic mountain at the center of it, which is why ships get pulled in towards this in the ancient records, if those ships have metal, especially metal nails or iron nails. Anyway, my point is, back to this other island over here. If one of them acts as an anode and there's another mass over here that acts as a cathode, we should expect one of them to go through a type of degradation. Okay, and this is what happens. One of them will give away parts of itself at the molecular level, or at least at the chemical level, and therefore it will degrade over time. It will get smaller and smaller, and then parts of it will actually drip down off into the ocean and collect in a huge pile of mud, known as anode mud. Anyhow, my point is, one of them should be either under the water completely because it's shrank down so small, giving away most of itself to the other island over time. And if that's true, the other one should be surrounded by land, as it would have built up over time, right? So on one side, we do see an abundance of water with one tiny island up there at the top. On the other side, we do see an abundance of land with many volcanoes over there that are, you know, candidates for anode or cathode islands. Now, on this one over here specifically, this one says, it's hard to read right there, but I've read it so many times, I'll just tell you what it says. It says polus magnetus, which means magnetic pole, in regards to this viridis isle. Viridis implies life-giving or green. This is a green island. This is a green land, right? So this could be it as well. Another reason that this is a candidate, and I'll tie in the connection to Gog and Magog here in a second, is because it's the first island of power, or place of power, that is directly across from the Euphrates River, which is this right here. I know many people think, oh no, the Euphrates is in the Middle East. You know, this guy doesn't know his history or whatever. I believe that the modern day Euphrates is renamed, as well as the modern day Tigris. Many people call it the Tigris. That's fine too. But there's two other rivers entirely missing in the Middle East, which means it's no longer a candidate for the Garden of Eden. This is a candidate for the Garden of Eden, being that it has a river that is split into 7 heads, just as the biblical Euphrates is said to have done and will do again twice, at least in the Bible that I've read. So this is the Euphrates River, we'll say. Okay. Now, there's also said to be, the Euphrates is the place where it acts traditionally as an entrance point, right? Biblically speaking, it said that the water was lowered in the Euphrates so that people could walk across, so that the kings of the East specifically could actually walk across. Now, kings of the East to me sounds like aliens, because East is up, okay? And this is the landing place. This is the gate of the gods. This is the place where the gods, the aliens, the angels, and whatnot, where they land. Why? Because it's right in the middle of the earth on the North Pole. Right? That's at the center of the earth, depending on your cosmology. If you have a modern cosmology, it's at the top of the world, which is fine too. But regardless, this is the landing place. Okay. They just drop straight in because the opening, the gate of the gods, is at the apex dome, right at the center of the firmament at the very top. Okay. And so that opens up during the apocalyptic cycle. Otherworldly travelers that are humanoid, that have advanced technology, they descend, they land in this particular area. All right. Anyways, I don't want to get too far off track. Let's get back to Gog and Magog. So here's my theory. Okay. This right here is Yggdrasil. This is the trunk of Yggdrasil. The actual tree of Yggdrasil is plasma, and it shoots right up out of this whenever we go through an electromagnetic polarity reversal, and all of those gases inside the Earth, in the hollow Earth, it depressurizes inside too, and those gases shoot forth at high velocity through all the cracks and crevices within the Earth, ionizing them. And when they ionize, they become plasma and light, and they shoot right up out of these volcanoes, which I call plasma volcanoes, and they spread all the way up to the heavens and touch the firmament, lighting it up. That being said, under Yggdrasil, there are said to be 3 roots, or 3 caves, right? If the actual plant is just plasma, then it's not full or anything, it's just a cave. And you can walk around in it. So we have 3 roots of Yggdrasil. This is the center one, clearly, right? Then we would have an anode and a cathode, right? On either side. So these are the openings within the Earth, the largest openings. Okay, the biggest openings right here in the middle. The other 2 would be the anode and cathode, and then there's smaller openings as we go further and further south and whatnot. I call them places of power, right? But this is also where, if there are inner Earth denizens or citizens or inhabitants, right? We would expect, if one of their tunnel systems, that it's basically their entire world, was positively charged, and all the way over here on the other side, another tunnel system, which is another entire world, is negatively charged, we would expect that to have an effect on the life forms that grow there. I would, at the very least. So I call these the anode and cathode islands. They're the outer islands that act as entrances up here to the surface world, on either side of the Garden of Eden. This is the positive and the negative, the boy and the girl, or the good and the evil, as far as, you know, like the thieves that were hung up with Jesus, which is the center beam. All right, cool. Let's continue on. Now, that's just a little recap. So I believe that there are, in my book, I'll sum it up for you, but I believe that on one of these islands is essentially vampires, or what have turned into vampires through the cartoonification of our ancient Oblivion, or our forgotten history, right? One of them is a very good-looking side, very healthy, very positive, vibrant, and mostly females, actually. On the other side, we have an island that is mostly males, and they have an abundance of testosterone, and they grow to gigantic sizes and stuff, and they become big, huge, hairy wild men, and things of that nature. So keep that in mind. That's my theory, right? Oftentimes, they live in cavernous systems. They're inner Earth denizens, or they're inner Earth inhabitants. They live in caves. They're very at home in caves, and they understand a whole network of cave systems. And it's very likely, if all of this is true, and let's say that the Earth is charging, which means all the energy is slowly being siphoned down into the Earth, or sucked down into the Earth. All the energy is being pulled into the heart, because the Earth at its heart is charging, so that one day it can release all of that energy and explode all that energy right back up here to the surface where we live. If that's true, we would expect those inner Earth inhabitants to be full of energy, would we not? If that's where the energy is, and it's constantly flowing through their little cavernous system down there or whatever, right? So yes, this also means that I would expect them to be more in tune with nature, have a stronger aura and a stronger spirit, and therefore be able to possibly read other people's spirits and have a form of telepathy. So let's keep these things in mind as we look over some evidence and some proofs for this theory. This right here is the Sistine Chapel. You'll know this because you can look right up at the roof, and we can zoom in and see Michelangelo's famous depiction of Adam and God barely touching their fingertips, right? Well, lesser known, if we zoom out, this is, you got to look straight up to see that on the roof or the ceiling. If we look straight across, this is the whole crucifixion scene. This is the main event over here. So let's go check that out. Now, this is basically showing you a painting on the wall of the Sistine Chapel that depicts the apocalypse, in my opinion. Okay, it depicts the hanging of Jesus, but I mean, if you look at all the things that are happening during the hanging of Jesus or the crucifixion, you'll see there's a lot of strange things. There's angels holding up skin suits. People, looks like they're just ripped, like their skin was ripped off their bodies. There's demons. There's people floating up into the sky. And right behind Jesus, actually, is something of interest and related to today's topic of Gog and Magog, especially this theory that they may be on one island at least, these giant, hairy, hair-covered humanoids with strange-looking feet. Look at that. Wow. I mean, what a contrast, right? Between like the main image of like sacrifice and, you know, giving it all up and stuff. And then all around this, what do we see? Right? People with humanoids with like different colored skin, pointed ears, hairy all over, protruding mouths like that. You see all this? And it even looks like maybe like a horn, or maybe that's the other ear. I don't know what that is right there. This is Bigfoot. And, okay, I like to go between like science and like fiction and fun. I like to be balanced between the two. But these things are fun for me to talk about. Okay, this is Bigfoot. All right, Bigfoot's real. Bigfoot is a wild man. Bigfoot is a wild person, you could say. And Bigfoot has been portrayed, and I just call it Bigfoot, but it's just a wild man. This is a beast man, and there's truth interwoven and all throughout our fiction, our creative abilities, movies, all this stuff. This is actual real stuff. It's the beast man. There's a whole tribe of these people that were just hairy, and oftentimes were drawn as having like protruding mouths and maybe even like teeth that stuck up much further than they should have. These people are mutated, in my opinion. And we've seen evidence for lots of different legendary tribes of mutant humanoids, right? These ones have been portrayed in many different ways. Sometimes when they're green, they're called orcs, right? Or ogres. Giants, to say the least, oftentimes very hairy, right? If they're unkempt and they don't really care about their hair or whatever, and they live out in the wild, they can grow moss all over it and become the green man. These are the beast men. These are the wild men. These are at least one tribe of inner earth inhabitants that is prophesied to rise up once this barrier is removed, and they're going to spread across the face of the earth. And they can see people's auras and stuff, right? But there's also a prophecy in the Bible that says that they themselves will actually be tricked although they'll be doing the work of God, according to the legend, they will be deceived and tricked, and they'll try to actually take out the Holy Land, which I believe is Hyperborea. Now, the wild men has been portrayed in many different ways. We talked about it a few times here on my channel, most notably whenever we've gone over the legendary tribe of dog-headed men from antiquity, from the Middle Ages, from the Dark Ages, and from bestiaries and ancient maps all over the place. Legend after legend, history after history, from explorers to nobility, to people of renown and fame who have no business lying, and, you know, people would never expect them to lie about things that they have seen and heard, and, you know, places that they've been. We've talked about the different travelogues of so many famous explorers, and even mythic explorers, as in the case of the Mael Duin in Irish lore, right? Many different islands, and each island seems to resonate differently, producing a different type of mutation. At the very least, we have one, which is an island said to have been the face of dogs. Sometimes, I mean, this just depends on the person looking at it. They're obviously not dog humans, or humans that are part dog or whatever, but there's truth to the legend. There's truth to the myth. There's something going on with their face which has been mutated, and they have an abundance of hair. Sometimes they're seen as being lion people, or cat people, or dog people, or pig people sometimes. Right? But I think that the most famous example is the legendary Bigfoot. Those cavernous systems, I believe that they go all throughout the earth, and that some of these inner earth civilizations have their own version of explorers and wanderers and nomadic peoples and whatnot, and they go off course and they go settle in different areas, and they find entrances, places where they can come up to the surface, right? But there's two main places, two large places where I believe this happens. And this is why Bigfoot is also shown with like a human, human look to him oftentimes. Him, her, whatever, right? Bigfoot, like this is the whole thing. This is from Harry and the Hendersons. And the whole point was they really zoomed in on Bigfoot's eyes, and you can see he's human. He's not some monster or something. He's just a different kind of human. It's just a mutated human or whatever. And they don't talk a lot. So the legends say that whenever these invading tribes from the north, which is where Gog and Magog are from, they're from the north, when they come down, and when they have come down before, which they have, that they grunted, that they made like barking noises, and they babbled, and they didn't really have a sense of speech the way that we do, right? So they were seen as real strange. Chilpaha, who was that? Chilpaha? Chilpaha 8 just gave me $20. Thank you. And says, if someone had the money, what is the closest they could live to this area without being shut down by the powers that be? Greenland or North Canada? If you had the money, I would say Greenland's probably the closest. Yeah. Yep. Good one. Then thank you for the support. All right, cool. Let's continue on. So we're talking about the Bigfoot connection, right? Gog and Magog. All right. They're also said to be very hairy and wild men, as well as gigantic, like much larger and much taller than your average tiny little human in this world. I believe that all of us are very short and that we're children because we don't live past 100. But we're all very short in stature. It's because the pressure keeps building and building and building, and it's just crushing us down, and we adapt every cycle and we get smaller and smaller and shrink and shrink. But inside of the earth, it's not the same. Inside the earth, the conditions are altogether different that allow for altogether different types of adaptation and growth. And so when we see these humanoids, we think that they're alien. But in reality, these are where our myths stem from. A hairy tribe of gigantic, very powerful, very strong aliens that look like or sometimes resemble dogs. Right? Just to say, you could say bears, you could say dogs, there's all kinds of things that I'm sure people have made up over time. And oftentimes they're portrayed as having some sort of staffs of power or magic wands or sticks or plasma guns and things like that, right? Now, we've turned these things into cartoonification. We have turned these into eye-catching stories of horror and whatnot, right? Now, there's truth to these stories, like the Dogman tribe. They're said to be cannibalistic, and they openly admit that. They have a certain way of life that's much different than ours. And they're said to they eat people that they beat and that they defeat in battle. God, I can't talk. They eat people that they defeat in battle. So they eat humans, or they will eat humans. It's not like they want to eat every human, but to some of them, at the very least, human seems to be on the menu. Not all of them, but some legends do indicate this, right? Now, we go down inside of the earth, and there have been many different books that have been written about the inner earth tribes, right? Like, for example, Vril. I actually did a book reading of Vril, the Power of the Coming Race, and it describes these inner earth beings, and it talks about how we were warned that they would come to the surface one day, and when they did, it would be bad for everybody, okay? They know down there, according to the legends, they know that we're out of control. They know that we've reached a level of technology that's dangerous if we don't have the right spirit. So we've been told from story to story that there are these protectors, these dog protectors that actually have our best interest at heart, that they've tried to be there for us, tried to warn us, tried to help us, tried to give us advice on how to live right. But since we didn't listen, then there will be an invasion, and they come to clean house, basically, right? Now, they don't look like, they're not dogs, okay? So it's discriminatory. That's like saying people are monkeys and other types of aliens are reptilians and stuff. These are just descriptors that we give. It's not to put anybody down. At least that's not how I would say it. But there's truth to the fiction. There's truth to these concepts, right? Even the name Looper from Lupercalia, which oftentimes is translated as wolf, the root of it actually means light. These are light beings or beings from the light. Beings from places of power, or these places that glow with plasma, that are lit up from within the earth by natural means. These are also people that have what they call werewolf disease, which is hypertrichosis. These are people that live now and exist now, and they're not always in the news or anything, so they're not really known about. A lot of modern day mutations are hidden away because they're considered grotesque, and they're not attractive. They're different, so people don't want to see it, so it's not put in the public eye, and it doesn't really make the news, and people are not taught about what this is and how it happens, and how this lies dormant within some people's DNA until every once in a while the conditions are right and it manifests, and it's a reminder, and it's an omen of things that once happened and will happen again, which is the rise of Gog and Magog. But yeah, there's these people lived all throughout antiquity, and oftentimes, more than often, according to the research that I've done, the people who have met and encountered and come into proximity and spoken with and dealt with representatives from these nations, they were treated as nobles, right? They were said to be from far off lands, far to the extremes of the earth, that they were oftentimes covered in hair, and yet they sometimes dressed like nobility. So that's how they were treated whenever they came down into the Southlands. And oftentimes these people are directly related to nobility in the modern world, right? But this is an example of something called hypertrichosis. And there's different types, various types of genetic mutations that have occurred, do occur, and will occur in mass whenever our world becomes radioactive, once again, and we live during a time of magic. This right here is just an artist rendition of Saint Christopher. Saint Christopher, who is said to be a dog-headed man. A man with the dog's head, and that's how in the ancient world he was portrayed. More modern depictions of Saint Christopher, they make him a clean-shaven white guy, but that's not how he was portrayed in the old world. In the ancient times, he was a dog. He was a member of the dog-headed society. I mean, it wasn't always dogs. Sometimes someone might look at something like this and see a pig-faced person. It all depends on the individual person that they were dealing with, what they looked like, and the person who's looking at them, their own perspective based on their life's experience and their vocabulary and stuff, how they describe things, right? So, entire tribes of these people that were said to be gigantic, that are said to have extreme strength or supernatural strength, basically. Let's look at the root of Gog, right? In the ancient world, I find that vowels are just empty filler. Okay, they were placed there to force a pronunciation and to retain a pronunciation, to retain a language, really, so that a tribe didn't get confused amongst itself. So we have different versions of this. Geg, we look up Geg, right? In Geg, G-E-G, the etymology, it says origin unknown, probably from Middle English, gegen, from Old Norse, gega, to deviate to the side, to go wrong, to go the wrong way, to rove at random. Or from Proto-Germanic, gejijana, to deviate, to totter, to transgress. From Proto-Indo-European, geg, to gape, to protrude, right? It's very possible that this genetic mutation causes their upper part of their skull and the lower part of their jaw to actually protrude and come further out, right? So it's interesting that there's this protrusion connection. Proto-Indo-European, gayal, which means to yawn or to gape. So mouth breathers, essentially, right? I don't know. This is kind of what I'm getting out of it. Gegen, to go, to walk, to pass by, to transgress, to trespass, to pass by, to neglect, to omit, to transgress. These are all kind of negative connotations I'm getting out of this, right? And it's interesting because in the Bible, it talks about outside of Jerusalem, or the real city of peace, the real paradise, okay? Outside of it, that the whole land is full of evil people who transgress and do wrong, and it even calls them dogs outside of this city. Because the legends and the prophecies indicate that they will surround this city. Well, how easy is it to surround it if you come from islands that are on either side of it? And that you're so powerful that when you come up, that you convince these nations of the world who for some reason are already starting to gather at the Arctic and move all of their troops and all their people and all their supplies up to the Arctic, almost as if to welcome the new overlords. I don't know. All right, let's continue on here. So we talked about how they've made their appearances, also like the cowardly lion symbolism and stuff too. Ancient times, how it's nothing fantastic. It's nothing, magical or whatnot, depending on your perspective. This is natural. This can be explained through scientific means, through medical means, through research. Anyways, that's just the word geg, G-E-G. Now let's look up another form. If we look up, this one is gig. Like, did you get a gig last night? Yeah, I had a gig playing the guitar at the show, right? It means like a job, right? Well, the root of gig has nothing to do with a job as much as it does the word for, I think it was violin. Hold on, what we got down here? Yeah, I think it was a word that described a violin or something. Basically, the string of the violin, which was hair, or can be hair, basically. Down here, though, under gig, it talks about, a gig was a top, like a spinning top, which was made to spin by tying a piece of string around it and then throwing it. So there's the string again. But also in British slang, archaic, it says a person with an odd appearance, also a foolish person, was a gig. Somebody that looks strange, a stranger. Okay. Well, that's interesting. We've got some nautical terms going on here too. Let's check out another one. Gug, G-U-G, Cornwall, and it means a cave. So in Cornish, Gug is a cave. So just like how we've got another connection to these wild men, these giant hairy humanoids that live in caves or know how to traverse cave systems within the earth. Now let's look at the actual root, which is even smaller. It's just the letter G 2 times. Well, this is interesting to me because the letter G is equivalent to the number 3. So GG, or good game, is equivalent to 33. And 33 is the numerical equivalent of this island right here, because oftentimes it's said that this island was 33 miles in circumference. Many different times. There's been a couple of different references to this island being 33 miles in circumference. Now, that's important. Why? Because if you know the size of the island on this map, you can calculate the other distances, like how long this river is, or how wide this one is, or how close it is to other things, right? I found that in my studies to be very helpful. So 33. Also, we go to Ezekiel 38 in the Bible. In Ezekiel 38, it's talking about Gog and Magog, and it's talking about how they're going to be released up to the surface. It says here, this is what the Lord God says, on that day. Usually that day means the last day, the apocalypse. On that day, the day of the Lord, thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will devise an evil plan. You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will come up against a tranquil people who dwell securely, all of them living without walls or bars or gates, in order to seize and spoil and carry off the plunder, to turn a hand against the desolate places now inhabited, and against a people gathered from the nations who have acquired livestock and possessions, and who live at the center of the land. Let me make that bigger. These people who live at the center of the land. So, in the Bible, it's not saying Gog and Magog are being sent up here to just sort of take over the entire world. Their interest, and I would expect this to be their interest, if what I'm saying has any merit to it, and they know the same thing, then this island at the center of the world is all that matters. Okay? You could have the whole rest of the Southlands where we live today. It's Hyperborea. It's the Garden of Eden. That's the real place of value here, right? And that's the city of peace. They don't have bars or, locks or anything like that. It's Jerusalem. And it says it's in the center of the land. Well, the center of the land is the center of the world, which is not Egypt, which is not the equator, which is not Antarctic or anything, but it's at the North Pole where the four corners meet, the extreme western parts of the world. Let's see what else. I think that was it for that one. Let me see what else I got here. Now, Revelation chapter 20, later on, Gog and Magog are mentioned again. When the 1,000 years are complete, so after the light rules for 1,000 years, the darkness rules afterwards, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. This is pretty crucial for me, okay? Satan will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to deceive them, the powerful ones that came up from under the earth, right? At least this is how I'm interpreting it. To assemble them for battle, and their number is like the sand of the seashore. They marched across the broad expanse of the earth. That's another way of saying flat earth. They marched across the broad expanse of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints. Let me show you what's happening. Okay? All this out here on the sides, this is what I call the Southlands. This is the broad expanse of the earth. This right here in the middle, this is the camp of the saints. This is the home of the righteous. This is the place of emergence. This is paradise. Adam and Eve's house, basically. All right. They marched across the broad expanse of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. This is right before an apocalyptic event where something comes downward from above and lights it all on fire, right? Well, what do we have above us that, is fiery in nature and capable of doing something like that? Something to think about. All right. The devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, into which the beast and the false prophet had already been thrown into. And there they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Well, let's see if we have a lake on this map. Bam! We do. Right behind Lord Racer. What's up, Lord Racer? High five. All right, now, right here, surrounding this central magnetic island, or rock, is a big fat lake. Right? Probably with a bunch of gases coming up out of it, I would assume. And if those gases ionize, then you're going to have a lake of plasma or a lake of fire, etc., and so on and so forth. All right, let's continue on. What else? This is really interesting too. So here's some little side notes. Now check this out. This is really interesting. So these are different accounts. We've got Ezekiel, like we talked about. We got Revelation, which we've went over. Rose Carter just gave 5 JayDreamerZ memberships. Holy cow. Thank you. Congratulations to Trad Life. High five. I'm just going to say congratulations to whoever just got these. I'm just going to wait a second. MB. High five, MB. I'm going to try to time it. And Kevilev. Hey, Kevilev just got a channel membership too. Hey, if you guys enjoy this type of discussion and these types of topics, go check out my website. There's lots of parts on there I think you'll enjoy checking out. The Upset Truther, good to see you. High five. Check out my website. There's previews of my books on there. There's lots of cool information about elves and giants and titans, the plasma apocalypse. Big Mad TV. Is that what I saw? Big Mad TV? Congratulations, everybody. All right, cool. We're about to finish this up. So let me read this part right here. In Islamic eschatology means the study of the end of the world, or the end of times, or the reset. Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog. Now, hold up. Let me go back. Before I even read this, I want to address something that's obvious to me. The name Og is in Gog, right? Which tells me that the G at the beginning might be a prefix. Something Og. Now, why is that relevant? Because Og is the king of the giants. And it's another name for Atlas. It's another name for that beam at the center of the world that holds its arms up and splits off into the great cosmic wings of the cosmic bird or whatever. Right? That's Og. And that's also, I think that the word orc and ogre or augur, I think all these are connected. Right? These are discussing and describing beings that live at this location, at the middle of the world. Some of them live under this location, okay? Remember, this is a doorway. This is not just paradise, not just a land, and that's it. It's just this. This is said to be a doorway that goes into the earth, and a doorway that you can basically, when the time is right, go to the center here and blast off, or go upwards towards the opening in the firmament, and you can leave into the heavens or whatnot, right? So it's the entrance into the heavens and into hell, or Hades, or the underworld, or Tartarus, etc. Yeah. I guess that's all I wanted to point out as far as that goes. Now, let's continue on. In European and Christian apocalyptic traditions, in the Sibylline oracles, Greek Jewish apocalyptic texts, Gog and Magog are rulers of distant lands who will lead an attack against God's people before the final judgment. So this is shown on many different movies. They'll have this huge culmination of a giant war between all these different races or beings or people. Oftentimes this is like in sci-fi or fantasy or whatever. And then all of them will be obliterated all at one time from some sort of heavenly fire. This is exactly what the Bible says, and that's exactly what happened in the movie Ready Player One. at the end. We did decode that movie, so you can check that out on my playlist. But at the end of Ready Player One, all the people in the world were gathered to this Arctic cold place to have this World War III type deal, and they're all these different people or whatever. Meanwhile, they're trying to get into this dark castle or dark tower that's covered by an electromagnetic dome. It's all telling you and showing you what happens. Anyways, they're all eradicated all at one time. Why? Because the sun basically will make its way to the North Pole and burn all those people. Not only that, but the sky's going to open up and stuff too. But let's continue on. Now, there's this huge army before the end. People ask me about omens all the time. This is a huge one, right? Watch the activity in the Arctic for omens. All right, watch what your countries are doing and how they're creeping up and how they're starting to argue about property and land and resources that are up in the Arctic, and watch the water levels and watch the appearance of new islands and new lands and other things and strange creatures that have never been seen before being found in the Arctic and, underneath the melting, what do they call that? Permafrost, right? Which permafrost is just permanently frozen dead stuff. Look into it. It's just permanently dead, frozen things, basically. What else we got here? Pseudo-Methodius, 7th century Byzantine prophecy, foretells an invasion of northern barbarian hordes, sometimes equated with Gog and Magog, who will be defeated before the rise of the Antichrist. Gog and Magog are directly related to the Pillars of Hercules. I'm not talking about the Strait of Gibraltar over near Spain. That's a renaming of an actual real place, okay? The real Pillars of Hercules come up out of the ocean, right? They're actual beams of light. They're two plasma volcanoes, anode and cathode, on either side of paradise, right? And they shoot their beams high up into the sky. And these are two outdoor barriers, which in Hebrew and Phoenician was pronounced chet. Two of them would be chet, or 8, because that's also the number 8. That's the number 8. So you travel beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and it's like you've gone into another time. You've been thrown back into some fanciful fantasy land of the lost, a land that time forgot. Medieval Christian legends, the Alexander romance. Now, I like how they call it romance right there, too, because Alexander, to me, is not a real human being that lived. Like, I don't know, there might have been some form of that, but to me, he's basically King Arthur. He's Prester John. He's all these different, legendary like leaders that, might not have actually been humans, but represented as a human because they've been personified. They're events that people saw. They're anomalies. They're strange things that people didn't understand, so they personified it. But anyways, Alexander met with Gog and Magog, and he also barricaded them back by a huge wall, and they were being trapped, and that they would be released at the end of time. So there's something holding them in the earth right now. There's some force that is holding on, acting as a barrier to keep them from coming up to the surface. One of these days, that force will be released. And I believe that that's when our world goes into enough of a fluctuation electromagnetically that those inner earth energy barriers, basically, they go down, and that the orcs can come to the surface and rise to the surface, which they will. Islamic and Middle Eastern eschatology, we talked about this one. Al-Tabari's Tafsir, the 10th century Islamic commentary, describes Gog and Magog as massive populations held back by a divine barrier until the last days. This is the underworld barrier. It's the barrier that's holding back the dead too. Okay, the dead are also going to rise. It's going to be a fun time for me, at least. I don't know about you guys. Ahmadiyya interpretation suggests that Gog and Magog symbolize modern world powers that will dominate before divine intervention. Yeah, well, I believe that those modern world powers are trying to make buddies, trying to make friends with the werewolf people. Okay, I mean, I'm using fun terms to describe it, but I'm being dead serious. You guys already know that, right? They're trying to talk to these people. They're trying to find all these little cracks in these barriers so that they can pass messages back and forth. And keep in mind, not all of them are big hairies, okay? They're not all hairy. This is just one tribe that I'm focusing on, one side, okay? I actually think that the other side probably doesn't really have that much hair. But I wanted to really focus on the big hairy ones. Now, let's continue on. Now, in the Quran, it says this. They said, "O Dul Qarnayn." Dul Qarnayn, let me talk about that. So there's this character named Dul Qarnayn. And what that basically translates into is has two horns. So they're talking to this person that has two horns. And people can grow horns, just so you know too. That's also real. All right, they said, "O Dul Qarnayn, indeed Gog and Magog are great corruptors in the land. So may we assign for you an expenditure that you might make between us and them a barrier." So he says, "That in which my Lord has established me is better than that which you offer, but assist me with strength, and I will make between you and them a dam. Bring me sheets of iron," until when he had leveled them between the two mountain walls, so between two mountains, he like melted the iron. "Blow with bellows until when he had made it like fire, he said, 'Bring me that I may pour it over the molten copper.'" So there's copper in this barrier, and then there's iron pulled up over it, right? Now, to me, this sounds like electrodes. Okay, if you're familiar with like how electricity works and stuff, the anode and the cathode passing between one and the other, these are great electrical conductors, and oftentimes they actually use copper-plated iron as electrodes in a system. But this would be electrodes on an earthly scale, on a gigantic scale, being gigantic, huge mountains acting as electrodes. All right, cool. Now, this is going to be a segment from Sir John Mandeville. We talked about Sir John Mandeville, one of the most popular medieval books of the time. Okay, one of the most popular books of the medieval times. Everybody read this book. It says it's describing all these different islands, right? Many people who read this book, they think that Sir John Mandeville was just like walking around somewhere in Asia, modern day Asia. I don't believe he was. I believe that he went to the island of the Hesperides and traveled up there in the extreme north and visited all these strange places that used to be called Ind, or, now India, which was the new land that was named after Ind. And places like Egypt, like the original Egypt and stuff, and the original Babylon, or Babylon the Greater, as he refers to it as here in his travelogue. It says that after that is another island where folks be all skinned rough hair as a rough beast, save only the face and the palm of the hand. So they didn't have hair on their palm of their hand or like their face or whatever. That hair everywhere else. These folk go as well under the water of the sea as they do above dry land. So these beings, these humanoids, by some method or means, were able to go down into the water and traverse the water just as easily as they would on top of the water. That's interesting. Kind of sounds like Atlanteans, right? And they eat both flesh and fish all raw. So they'll just eat raw fish and raw flesh. In this island is a great river that is well a 2.5 miles of breadth, that is clept the Bowmare River. Let's see. I think I had something else in here about those guys, though. I don't remember. Dang. But anyways, I thought that was interesting too. You can really use this particular manuscript, The Travels of Sir John Mandeville, to really piece together what is what in this location, because he basically tells you in great detail what is what. You can figure out that this is the Nile, that that's the Euphrates, that this is probably the land called Ind, that this is probably Mesopotamia, and that there's all these places in between. You can figure out where they are. It's pretty fun, actually, for me personally. What else we got here? Oh, this is Admiral Byrd's diary. I forgot about this. So Admiral Byrd mentions that in his secret diary that, one sec. Hold on, I gotta find where it is. Storm. There we go. All right, cool. So according to the secret diary of Admiral Byrd, right, which this is all gossip at this point because, it's been swept under the rug, but to me, it's valid. To me, I vibe with this story. So Admiral Byrd is the legend says he's going to the North Pole, and something happens to his plane, and it basically gets pulled in by like this tractor beam into the earth, right? So there's this huge opening at the North Pole. He goes down into the earth. These giant beings walk up to him. They're highly advanced, and they show him their city down there and stuff. They take him to their leader, and the leader says this. The leader's talking with him and talking about how they tried to go up and talk to the humans, but they were shot at. Their vehicles were shot at. And so they realized how aggressive the humans were and how immature they were. So now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms. There will be no safety in your science. It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled and all human things are leveled in vast chaos. Your recent war was only a prelude to what is yet to come for your race. We here see it more clearly with each hour. Do you think that I'm mistaken? And that at that point, Admiral Byrd responds and says, no, you pretty much summed it all up. Humanity's dangerous and immature, right? Now, that's one account. But in this other book, called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. Let me pull this up. Let's see how I can make this bigger. How do I make this bigger? One sec. Oh, I'll just scroll up there, I guess. All right, cool. So this is a great book. They try to spin it like this is fiction. It doesn't sound like fiction to me whatsoever. And this was a book that was written about 100 years ago, probably more. All right. Now, this guy falls down. There's this miner. The whole story, long story short, this miner, he's at work. He falls down into the earth, right? The mine he was in opens up and he falls down into this tunnel, him and a friend. They go way down to the earth. His friend hurts his leg, and all of a sudden there's this like gigantic lizard-looking thing that basically goes and scoops up his friend and eats him. So he takes off running down this tunnel. He gets lost down in the inner earth, right? And then he comes upon this opening, this huge opening inside of the earth where he sees plasma that's lighting the whole inner earth world in these different forms, and these giant humanoids that live down there. And they talked about this force. They talked about this energy that's natural and prevalent inside of the earth, and they called it Vril. And they had Vril baths, and they washed in Vril, and they used Vril to energize these magic staffs that they had. And in this one part, he's, obviously they're going to ask him about the surface world. He's learning about the inner earth. But in regards to the surface world and how dangerous they are, this conversation happens. And he's talking about what would happen if, some of them, they have smaller numbers than all the people on the surface. And he's like, I'm just concerned about you and your people. If you do come up to the surface, I know how humans are, and they're likely to attack. And there's so many of them that they would likely overwhelm you guys, and he's becoming friends with some of these inner earth giants. The response is this. My host stared at me astonished. You, stranger, he said. You could not have heard me say that this threatened tribe belongs to the Vrilya. It only waits for these savages to declare war in order to commission some 6 small children to sweep away their entire population. Now, this is written back when people had good vocabulary and spoke better, but I'll translate that. Basically, that means... That's basically what that equates to is... Our children could whoop the whole population of your surface world with our technology, right? And they actually show examples of this whenever they have a child, use one of these little power staffs that they have down there against that giant lizard creature, one of those giant lizard creatures that was in the inner earth. Just whoops it, no problem, right? Then they use the guy for bait. It's actually a really funny part of the story. And that, I believe, is a quick, brief presentation on Gog and Magog. So I don't know if I missed anything, if I didn't cover it all. Maybe we can do another one sometime if people have questions. If you do have questions, put them in the comment section. I'll go check them out. From time to time, I do answer a question or two in the comments section, but you guys can also ask each other and talk to one another and throw around your ideas on the subject of Gog and Magog. Who are they? What do they represent to you? What part of this presentation was something that you vibed with, that you found useful, or you could add to the library of your mind. I'm going to take off now. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
In a time when an ancient cataclysm is about to return, one book holds the key to unlocking the biggest secret in all of history. JayDreamerZ presents Ancient Oblivion, the Plasma Apocalypse. Study it, and you'll discover the very real details behind the reoccurring event that resets civilizations and reshapes the entire world. Bridging the gap between fiction and fact, this book is a must-have for all truth seekers. Then in his second book, you'll learn about the one place of refuge from this world storm. You'll explore the ends of the earth, find the fountain of youth, and envision yourself enveloped in the vapor canopy. In Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea, available now. Order direct from JayDreamerZ and receive your very own autographed copy. Go to JayDreamerZ.com for more information on our Ancient Oblivion and the Plasma Apocalypse, and sign up for a free 24-hour cram session with a complimentary day pass. The end is near, so order now before it's too late.
Time to wake up, Come